All right, let's get started. Final session for today's event. Yeah, Joe is ready to go. So we're super happy to have Joe Justice back with us. He was one of our speakers at the very first Agile 100, and now at our 9th edition, he's joining us back. In the meantime, he had a stint at a company that is fairly interesting at Tesla. And we will spend the vast majority of today's session to talk to Joe about what he learned there, right? So Joe, welcome back. And Susie and I will jointly do that interview with you. We will grill you. We warned you. And let's give us a bit of a background. What happened since we saw you the last time here, which was in May 2020?
When the pandemic started, I had a schedule of traveling in Europe, teaching Scrum Master classes, Product Owner classes, Agile Hardware classes, and they were all in person. They were all going to different European countries and teaching. And lockdown happened. I was in Switzerland teaching a class, and I flew out right as flights were being restricted. And I had 100% cancellations. All the in-person classes were canceled. My entire 2019 calendar year was canceled. And I thought, well, what will I do as we figure out what this pandemic means? And I said, Tesla is changing the world, and I've been convinced they're the future of work, and they're the next generation or next generation of what Agile should be. Is it true? Well, I've got time. All my classes are canceled. I'll apply. And I applied to work at Tesla and at SpaceX and at the Boring Company and OpenAI and Neuralink in all different types of positions: project management, leadership, welding, shop management, supply chain work, composites, programming. I've had an interesting enough background. I got to apply for most positions. I was a developer at Microsoft before. I worked with Bill Gates previously in evangelism at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I've worked at project management at a high level, and I've been an executive and executive consultant for a lot of Japanese companies. So I could apply for most positions, and I thought this will be my pandemic job. I'll learn as much as I can. Now, at Tesla, it's 12-hour shifts every day. It's 12 hours. So you have overlap with the next shift, and it's 24-hour operations. And when we Agilists talk about shared ownership, there's no way to avoid it when it's continuous 24/7, 365 operations. So I would call it radical shared ownership. Like, it is XP. Everything there. So you have these 12-hour shifts, but I would come in an hour early because here I am, an Agilist who wants to find out the process that really makes the world more awesome. So I'd come in an hour early and take notes on the previous shifts, everything they were doing for new product introduction, new product development, procurement, supply chain management, manufacturing, assembly, vendor management, logistics, and fill up a diary. And then I would stay for 2 hours after, and I would go to the department before where I worked that day. Well, it's not really a department, but where the stuff came from that I worked on. And then I would go to the next area. So I'd follow the product. And I ended up going through all of Tesla, Fremont, California global headquarters, and most of SpaceX Boca Chica, where Starship is made, and SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California as well, taking notes 2 hours after shift and 1 hour before shift. Then Tesla explicitly allowed me to teach Scrum or Agile on the 2 off days. I would have 2 off days often is how the structure worked, and I would teach class. Now, that said, I got exhausted pretty fast, and I'm really in shape. I'm a very fit person, but that only lasted so long. That was pretty intense, but I learned a tremendous amount, and I will try to share everything I can without violating my non-disclosure agreement.
So let's start at the beginning. What was your first impression when you joined Tesla? Like you entered the office, what was your feeling?
Um, well, I remember it really clearly. Let's see if I can collect my thoughts. Uh, there's a movie from a long time ago, like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, called Starship Troopers. And there's this scene where the protagonist and the protagonist's friends all join the like Space Marines or Space Army or something, and they all get this awesome equipment and everything's crazy futuristic, and yet it's really lean, might be the right word. Like it feels roughly in your face fast, and yet super futuristic and exciting. It's like that. I felt like I just signed up for Starship Troopers. I mean, it was on from the moment I walked in. The first thing that happened, and luckily this has been leaked, so I get to talk about it. There's a lot of things I want to say that I can't. This one I can. The first thing that we all got when we handed in was the employee handbook, and it's called the anti-handbook handbook, and it's 4 pages long, and that is it. And it's someone else leaked it. I recommend everyone read it. It's the new Agile Manifesto. It's the Agile Manifesto if you want to make billions of euro. So it's the one that works. And it says you are fully empowered. If you see an opportunity, it is your duty to fix it or do it. You can do anything you want. You can talk to anyone you want. And if anyone tries to stop you, they'll be fired immediately. Now, the fired immediately part, they didn't write it. Elon said it. So I get to say that too. Elon said it. He says, and if anyone tries to stop you, Elon says, you can talk to me. And if anyone tries to stop you, they're canned. And truly, from the moment I walked in there, just like everybody else, I could buy a robot, I could buy land, I could set up a factory, I could try to sue another company. It's the full empowerment, and you have access to billions of dollars, no matter who you are, from the second you walk in that company. And you can go anywhere you want, and nothing is hidden from you. I then navigated the hierarchy tree, because they use some, it's all custom apps. Like your phone gets loaded with apps once you sign in, and you do everything through apps. Everything's instant chat. You don't need a laptop for almost anything. It's just whatever phone you've got. And they don't give you a phone. Like, it's just like, you got a phone, right? And poof, you have everything. And it's password protected and multiple authentication. Security is pretty serious, but it's whatever your phone is. And you can navigate. They bought some of the software, and some of it they made in-house. Some of the software is legacy traditional software, almost Microsoft project type. And of course, that doesn't get used as much, but it's in there, it's in the package. So you can navigate the hierarchy tree, and you can see the software trying to make a hierarchy out of it, because there's no hierarchy. Like it is flat. There's a video of Elon Musk saying, "This is where I sleep." And it's a sleeping bag in the paint building. And that's right next to where I was working most of the time. And yeah, so it's like, go up the hierarchy tree. There's no up. It's like, they're working here. Okay, who's their boss? Oh, they're there. Like, I just did work with them 20 minutes ago. Oh, who's their boss? Oh, Elon. Elon's sleeping there. And Elon was just like working on this robot with me over here. And or in this area, working in this area. Actually, most of the time I was there, Elon was at SpaceX, but where he slept was like right there. And honestly, to say it right up front, I think this is why German manufacturing companies don't have a chance. I've worked with the board of Bosch and the executives at BMW, and met some of the executives of Porsche and Volkswagen, and none of them are going to sleep in a factory, and none of them are going to program a robot, and none of them are going to put adhesive on inner assemblies on the production line, because that's what, one, needs to be done, and two, because that's how you learn. None of them are going to do that. They're business people. They're overhead, and they will never compete with Tesla, and they will die. And your stock tip for the day is Tesla is worth about 100 to 1,000 times less than its overall projected value. So I don't know if you're an investor, and investing is gambling. We could all lose. But my stock advice is, yeah, Tesla is going to go up 100 times to 1,000 more times within the next 10 years. So if you've got some money you can afford to wait on, that'd be a smart place to put it.
So there's already a question from someone in the audience, Joe, asking whether you can share how does the 12-hour shift work? Is it for everyone, every department? How do people adapt to it? And during the break, before we got people in here, we already started going deeper into some of these things. So I think this is now a good time to talk about this, because you mentioned yourself, you didn't last long. I guess also because you didn't take those 2 days off, you taught in those 2 days. But in general, I mean, what you're talking about sounds very exhaustive, right? So walk us a bit through that, right? In Agile, we talk about sustainable pace. How do you bring sustainability in that extreme way of working?
I think this is super important for those of us who are interested in business performance and agility. Now, there's part of agility that says what we want are happy people writing software. That is part of agility. That's one of the undertones in the Agile Manifesto. And that's also important. There's also part of agility that's business performance. What's the part of engaging with the customer that creates business performance? And they coexist very nicely. So there's multiple perspectives. What I think I've learned is if you're going to work a lot, it's got to be super fun. And when Musk introduces Giga Berlin, he leads by describing the rave cave, the massive nightclub that's essential to the factory. In fact, it's one of the leading features and structures of that huge factory is the rave cave. And he's not being trivial about that. If you're working that intensely, it's got to be what you would do for fun anyway. And if it is, that's one aspect of sustainable pace. And I think a lot of Agilists get that. They made their scrum room or their team room or their mob space really fun. They would bring in sand, kiddie pools, holiday lights, play music. They would try to make it like what they would do for fun anyway. And Musk gets that. So there's a huge amount of fun involved. SpaceX Boca Chica, where they make the largest rocket in the world, Starship, there's a bar, a tiki bar, a Polynesian themed bar on top of one of the launch towers. And then there's a restaurant at the base made out of exploded rocket ship parts. And that's so cool. A lot of the people that work at SpaceX and Tesla and the Boring Company, that's where they would go anyway. If they could go anywhere in the world for fun, that's where they'd go anyway. So what that does is it means you don't leave work to go have fun. For the amount of time you want to have fun, that makes sense to still be at work and still talking with people about your productivity. So that is one method. Make it absurdly fun or absurdly fashionable or absurdly luxurious, but make your work your ideal destination. So there's some power there. The second part,
just quick.
Oh yeah.
So very similar to what Google has been doing over all of these years, right? Make the campus such a great place to go so that people don't want to leave. Now, there can be downsides, especially if people should be leaving in order to spend time with their families, right? But I'm sure you will get into this. Just wanted to create that similarity to Google's approach.
The idea, it's normal in Silicon Valley. I'm not sure how many people here have had the luxury of working in Silicon Valley. It's normal in Silicon Valley to have live baristas and baristas mixing whatever coffee drink you'd like and trying to do it at a world-class level, truly aspiring to be world-class 24/7, 365. That's normal in a Silicon Valley company. Tesla does it too. And the baristas and baristas are very good. They'll do Australian style coffee. They'll do Parisian style coffee. They'll do American cafe style coffee, depending on what you like. An Italian and truly trained by Illy's leads. They really try to be world-class and they're good. They'll also attempt to serve, they'll try Michelin 3-star quality They try, and sometimes they hit it. Food, free, every 3 to 4 hours, 24/7, hot. Um, that way, it's the best or near the best food you could get anywhere in the world, and it's there. So you might as well stay there, to Saurabh's point. And that's normal in Silicon Valley. Google's sushi restaurants were legendary. I'm not sure if they still are, but they were legendary. They were fantastic world-class sushi restaurants on the Google's campuses. And there's a climbing wall and a post office, dry cleaning, haircuts. So you can get that stuff done. You were banking on the Microsoft campus, which isn't quite Silicon Valley, but it's similar culture, or Google or Amazon, et cetera. Starbucks is totally the same way. And so is Tesla. So that helps. That helps. I think I missed part of the comment you led us to, Saurabh.
Yeah. So how do you make it sustainable?
Okay, well, there's a second part, and then there's what I think is the opportunity to be better. The second part that makes this work, I think, is you treat it like a professional sport. And if any of us have ever played a professional sport, I was never pro, or known someone who played at the pro level, you understand it affects their diet, their sleep schedule. They'll say things like, oh, well, I've got training tomorrow, so I'm going to bed early. And they'll mean it because they're pro, right? And that's a lifestyle choice. And not everyone wants to make that choice. Not everyone will go pro. If you treat it like a pro sport and you say, this is my bedtime because I've got, well, work tomorrow. Work for you is game day at a company like Tesla or SpaceX. It's game day. Every work day is either training, like a pro sports analogy, or game day. So it's okay. I'm going to go to bed on time and I'm going to eat better. I won't eat that because I know I won't sleep as well. And you got to tune your body like that. You treat it like a pro sport. And what that also means is your support system needs to be dialed in. If you know a pro athlete or have been a pro athlete, your spouses and your friends either need to accommodate and help and check the mail or mow the lawn because it's game day, or, you know, pick up the kids because it's game day, or you need to simplify your life so you don't have those things. You live in a condo where there isn't a lawn to mow and they'll scan your mail for you and email it to you, and you don't have to physically get your mail. And your kids live with your grandparents because you're a pro sports player, right? And that's a lifestyle choice. If you simplify your life or have a support system to the point that you could be a pro athlete, that makes any intense endeavor like pro sports more attainable or more possible. But that's a prioritization decision not everyone wants to make. If you do that, and then it's super fun, yes, it is sustainable. Mm-hmm. That said, I think there's some stuff we Agilists can bring to this new wave that will make it even more approachable for more kinds of people. And I think that's really important. I loved, and I think I'm not the only one, Agile Testing Days and Agile Testing Days Europe as a conference, and ALE, Agile Lean Europe. Quite possibly the most fun I've ever had in Agile conferences, and maybe the most I've ever learned. And that's an interesting, useful overlap. And I think Elon is trying to bring the Musk companies to be more like ALE, Agile Lean Europe at work, and more like Agile Testing Days at work. But I don't think the Musk companies are there yet. I think they have a lot to learn from the organizers of ALE, of how to be super productive. You learn a lot. I mean, ALE, if for those of you who've been, is a tremendous, I thought, tremendously effective learning experience. They have a lot more that they could teach the Musk companies that the Musk companies haven't learned yet. So I think we Agilists have a lot to give back too.
Yeah. So what would those things concretely be? Give us a few examples.
There's our definition of ready and definition of done, so that you can engage on your own, is absolutely present in Tesla. But one of the things I got to do is bring a lot more of DOR and DOD, and that and open space. right? Open space works well because everyone understands there's a law of 2 feet, and it's not shameful to have people leave your session, or it's not shameful for you to leave someone's session. Posting those very simple, elegant, object-oriented, wiki-style rules helps. And I got to do a lot of that when I was running Agile at Tesla, which amplified the culture. So that's part of it. Being more explicit about the simple rule set. And honestly, I think that's what Scrum does super well, is Scrum has very few rules. There's 3 roles, 5 events, and 1 activity. It's getting more complicated, not less. It should probably be 3 events, but anyway, it's 5 plus an activity. And then 3 outputs. It's a pretty short list. Those types of very well thought out, well reinforced by research, simple, easy to keep in your mind rules are, I think, what we Agilists have distilled that a lot of really high performing companies haven't. And that creates some burnout. So bringing more of that in. Tesla has DOR and DOD, definition of ready and definition of done, per each position, which helps make them walk up simple. People can walk up and work in a very new area of the company all the time. And we did it all the time. But being more explicit about that and posting team working agreements, the visual management could be better. It's really good. And in some ways, it's way better than what most of us Agilists have. But there's some Kanban flow whip stuff that some cutting edge software teams have figured out that I didn't see anywhere in Tesla that would make the work easier to visually manage. Dot voting, I didn't do any dot voting. I didn't see any dot voting when I was in Tesla. That's a fantastic, simple Agile practice. And it's not even necessarily Agile, but Agilists love it. Doing that well. There's some Agile coaching stuff that would really help these companies.
What was the most difficult for you when you joined? You've got your ideas, right? But then the reality might be different. So what was most difficult for you to digest on that?
Well, there's like the aspirational fun answer, and then there's the actual concrete answer. And the actual, yeah, I'll try. Yeah, the actual concrete answer is, man, this is it, right? This isn't the romanticized answer. This is actually the hardest part. Was the bathroom was a 7-minute walk away, and up 3 flights of stairs from where I was most of the time. And it was really hot, and you're inside face shields, goggles, 2 layers of masks. You have nitrile or plastic gloves on, because I mean, it's COVID times too, right? So you're basically in a little spacesuit. And you hup it. So you've been working hard, right? I built thousands of Tesla Model Y parts, Model 3 parts, S, X, designed new product development, new product integration, prototyping line. So you're thinking about as hard as you've ever thought and physically working. You're full stack in these companies. There aren't desk jobs. There's no job where you're not lifting 20 kilograms continuously, no matter what, right? So there's not a sit down type job. It doesn't exist. But there's a lot of mental work. You just do it while you're physically working. So you've been working hard, and then you got to walk fast or even slow run for 7.5 minutes up and 3 flights of stairs to pee. And then you pee because it's your one break, and you're like, and I really would like a coffee. I don't have time because it's COVID time. I'm going to wash my hands for 60 seconds. So you wash your hands for 60 seconds. And then you glove up, next layer, glove up. It's like you're going back into surgery, right? And you check your protective gear, and then you rush back 7.5 minutes. So you're there in time for the next batch of robots. That is actually the hardest part. And here's the shortcut that's wrong and what creates some of the problems. Actually, I don't think I get to say the next part because of non-disclosure, but I got to say the first part at least, and maybe you can guess what I would have said. Then more aspirational, the hardest part is because you have complete empowerment, it's really tempting to you're like, I just completely solved this problem that if I were in Toyota, I would have been made a vice president, right? It was such a big deal. If I was in Ford, I would have just won an award and the CEO would have handed it to my group and my team with our team name etched on it in crystal. And we all would have gone out and have champagne, right? There'd be these dramatic recognitions of achievement. Well, in a company like the Musk companies, those happen in almost every team several times a day, because it truly is that much more awesome. I'm not even kidding. I mean, how do you think by far and away the safest SUV in the world was made in less time than it takes BMW to change the shape of an air inlet, and they still haven't fixed their navigation? So it truly is that tremendous. And I love BMW, by the way. But there's not that recognition. There's not that champagne party. There's not time. I mean, the next batch of robots in cars is there. So more aspirationally, truly the harder part is the bathroom with 7.5 minutes at a fast walk. But more aspirationally is you would expect, okay, we did it. But truly that phrase, the reward for hard work is more hard work. Yeah, you've got to pat yourself on the back, because I mean, everyone will say, good job, but like, that's it. They're not gonna slow down. They're not gonna be a party where they stop production because you were great. It's expected. It's expected you just did something best in the world. So you've got to congratulate yourself.
So Joe, there's a question in here. You mentioned empowerment, and this question, I just ask it quickly, and then I have a follow-up question on that myself. Would you authorize yourself to order new toilets closer to the line?
Yeah. So that actually would have been the solution, and that's what I was working on, actually, right when I did ultimately end. So yes. Also, part of that was legacy that Tesla's headquarters at that time, arguably the headquarters is going to be Giga Texas or Giga Berlin. But at that time, it was Fremont, California, and that was a former Toyota and GM plant.
Yes.
So you can install stuff, but there's a lot of thick existing concrete and maybe not the places you'd want. Technical debt, right? There was technical debt from a very different waterfall way of running an automotive plant from when Toyota and GM had laid the footprint of that plant. And they just put restrooms in really unhelpful places. That said, we could have done portable facilities and then had them pumped or robotically maintained. And that's actually what I was working on, because it's super important.
So my follow-up question has nothing to do with restrooms, but with the topic of empowerment. So you mentioned there is like extreme empowerment.
Yeah.
Now, in most organizations where I work, and maybe it's the same for you and for Zuzi and for many others here in the audience, empowering people is usually not enough, right? Especially when they come from a legacy culture, legacy structures, processes, and metrics. There is a ton of coaching required, right, to move people towards more and more self-organization and self-management. And even if they are there, it also takes a ton of coaching from leaders to develop people continuously, right? Now, how is that handled at Tesla? And maybe my assumptions that I just shared are completely wrong based on your experiences at Tesla and probably other Musk companies as you're referring to them.
Well, among Agile trainers and coaches, consultants, or professionals, I'm very unusual in that my stance has always been that an Agile transformation can take 4 hours or less. That's a very unconventional thought or stance. And most Agile consultants, trainers, coaches, consultancies will talk about an Agile transformation over the course of years. And that fits their experience. I don't think they're wrong. And I think for the methods that work well for them, that's true. I have a very unconventional stance. And my work history does support my unconventional stance. And maybe that gives me a unique perspective into this. At Tesla, there was so much continuous reinforcement of the fact that you're 100% empowered that there's inertia, right? There's cultural inertia of empowerment, that it would be silly if you weren't, is almost how it feels. And there's nothing that ever points a different direction. There's nothing about annual review or annual goals or anything that points a different direction. That I don't think coaching would help. I don't think in a company like that, I don't think it's needed. That said, in other company cultures where you have cultural inertia, it's a mindset change at mass, because people's habit behaviors will reinforce a less agile culture. And so that's habit changing, right, of everyone. And that probably does take an army of coaches to try to be leading by example. But if you already have this agile culture and you introduce some people with a waterfall or unempowered or handoff mindset, it'll be blown out of them in minutes, because there's nothing compatible with that. One of the reinforcements there is there's almost no place to sit down. I mean, you're doing, and there's clearly no handoff, because you go with the product from definition of ready to definition of done at a minimum. So the work enforces that it's phaseless, and the work enforces that there's no handoffs, and everyone tests their own work, period. So there's no concept of handing off to test. And the visual flow indicators, how can I say it? There's no room to pontificate.
Do they have a different work style and culture, right? So do they have also a different type of interview? So do they prepare you or test you if you would be a good fit, or how your interview process look like?
So the teams that you're gonna work with first, and there's radical movement. I mean, you go all around these companies, but the teams you're gonna work with first interview you directly. So they're gonna interview you, which is a very agile practice anyway. So they interview you and see if they want to add you to the team. That said, the output and quality from every team and even every person, I mean, you work as a mob. It's very much mob work. It's a lot like what Woody Zuhl has been saying for a long time. It's a lot like mob. That said, it's still pretty clear to see people's individual capacity or contribution, even though you're in this throng, because you're working so closely together. Because the team can ask you not to come back at any moment, and that sounds super unhealthy. There's a lot of respect for people, a huge amount. There's a huge amount of we got each other's back, we're in this together, shared ownership. I'd say you'd have to do something really dumb to get canned immediately, or really dangerous or enormously disrespectful to get canned. But because you could be ejected by your team members at any time, there's a lot of safety. I don't mean it to sound like there's not, but it's not like you wait for a review and you get to appeal it or anything. It's instant. Everything is instant. That you truly do your best to bring your best self at each minute. Because of that, my impression was Tesla will hire anyone. Anyone is my impression. So yeah, the team you're going to work with interviews you, but you're going to get hired is my understanding. And if it's not working out in the first few minutes, they'll ask you not to come back. But the extension of your interview is really doing the work. And as a result, someone I worked with a lot, and we move around a lot, and our swarms and mobs move around a lot. But someone I worked with a lot was a MBA from MIT Sloan Business School, which is one of the better known business schools. And they were a part of United States President Barack Obama's reelection campaign, as I understand it, in a senior position. So an extremely rare, possibly ultra talented and at least ultra educated person. And another person on our team, I believe, had been a former convict, formerly in prison. And I don't think they even finished high school. And we all performed as a team at an extremely high level. And sometimes the convict was the better performer. So that led my impression of the interview process to be, okay, we want to get to know you so we can hit the ground running, not to vet you. We'll vet each other when we're doing the real work. So you're hired. I'm glad we got to know you. Now let's see if we can actually perform.
That's nice. I wish all the organizations are like that, because then you get a chance, right?
You get a chance. Yeah, so anybody can. And I think anybody can get a second, third, or fourth chance. So you can, I think, go in and out, or go Tesla to SpaceX to Boring Company to another company and come back. There's a culture of very high forgiveness. Just simply when you're at work, they want you to try to do a really good job. And if you're not doing that, they'll ask you not to work. And I think that's why it's so lean and why there aren't any desk jobs. Because if you, like, and you're empowered, right? So you could make a desk and you could sit down and start doing waterfall 5-year-long project plans. You could. And everyone around you would say, you are not contributing to the mission right now. And you would be asked not to come back.
So what is the percentage of women that work in Tesla? We have one of those questions, but I was struggling, I think, about it in my head as well. Like, would it be for me or not? So what is the percentage of women?
One more time, Susie, please.
What is the percentage of women?
Oh, a little over 50% was my experience. I didn't see an overall metric, but a little more than half were ladies. Was my impression. And Tesla, specific to the Musk companies, was just scored for the, I think, 5th year running, maybe longer, the #1 place in the world to work for lesbian, bi, gay, transgender, LGBTQ, that group. They were saying there's not a better place in the world to work. And I think that's because people truly don't care if you were a convict or went to MIT Sloan, or a man or a woman. It's just, are you contributing to the mission? So people that are interested in contributing to the mission can, and there's very little awareness of if you're handsome or not, or anything.
So basically, I mean, what you're saying, it's a true meritocracy, right?
On a good day, yes. I mean, no company is perfect, but I think it's closer to that than I've experienced.
Yeah. So someone's asking, Christoph is asking, Tesla builds a factory in Germany, the Giga Berlin, right?
Yeah.
And what is your assumption? Will they be able to establish the same culture you experienced? Especially, I mean, I read a report that they're hiring a lot of engineers and like managers from Daimler, from Volkswagen, who come from a completely different background. And that's why I was asking the question about coaching. Mm-hmm. What would be your guess based on your experience there yourself?
What I'd like to do is ask some of the European Agilists who like to work on the CET time zone, or are even physically there, to create programs to prepare folks from traditional German top tier automotive and manufacturing companies for this mindset. I think Musk is going to solve it. I think Musk will solve it. And I think these people will make the curve. I think they'll have an easier time with a common vocabulary if Agilists that like to work on CET and people that work, sort of your Scrum Academy would be a perfect example. So you're thinking of joining Tesla because they're going to be hiring They already are hiring tens of thousands of people. Here is a recommended ramp up program for you. And I think that's going to help a lot of people and make it less traumatizing to join in. But that said, I don't think it's not going to work. I think the culture will persist, but I think it will be more comfortable if people come in with some of the vocabulary, some simulations. I mean, a lot of us in this Agile 100 have seen the airplane game or the context switching loss game or the coin game or these Agile games. And you've seen when it happened to you, and then maybe if you've taught it, the lights in your participants' eyes when they see how one piece flow when managed as a group is dramatically faster, or how production as a mob is faster than individual steps, for example, the airplane game, with quality immediately visible to everyone, test in the loop. And that's not known to a lot of folks yet. And they'll figure it out pretty quickly in Giga Berlin. But if they've done that first, they'll be that much less shocked. And I think that's going to help.
I mean, one good thing is you offer courses in CET time zone, if I'm informed correctly. So anybody who wants to learn about Agile application, especially in the world of hardware and the terminology and the examples of Tesla, I mean, feel free to join some of Joe's training. I participated in one of your hardware trainings a few years ago. We did that together at Bosch, and it was really, really good. It basically opened my eyes to see to what extent you can actually apply the same techniques that we do in software and services development also to hardware, where in many cases, and we had a session earlier today, the assumption is, or the myth is, that it's not that maintainable if you apply agile practices. So we have 10 minutes left, Joe, and I wanted to go into this topic of the environment again, because one of the points that you mentioned was, if you put people into this environment where this empowerment is continuously reinforced, it basically automatically results in a change of behavior, right? And the reason why that resonated with me is I've always talked about the transformation of organizations as a cultural change. And I always talked about culture being the collective mindset, and mindset being the habits that we display. And we can never go into the brains of people. And this is my son raising his hand. Now, okay, you get to see people once, but now go play. So this only happens here. Okay, another one.
No,
you can play as well.
Please have him join. We are now Agile 101.
Yeah, or two. I have another one. So, but let's focus back on the topic. So I always say that you can never go into people's heads and basically change the neurons and change their habits, but you can always change the environment. And what I'm sensing from what you're saying is the environment is so dramatically different with all its goods and bads, right? You're not making the point that everything's perfect there, but that immediately results in people behaving differently. Is my understanding correct? I see you nodding, but maybe you can dive into this a bit more.
So the reason why my stance and my track record is an agile transformation doesn't need to take more than 4 hours, which I get it. That's highly controversial and is very counter to so many other people's very valid experience. I respect that. Is because of what I think I just heard Saurabh say. And Saurabh, please play with your kids too. If the work we're doing isn't inclusive of family and pets, we're doing it wrong.
They want me to go get a package that was delivered to the neighbor, which I can do in 10 minutes, but not now.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. That said, the session's also recorded, so you can always come back and see whatever I say later if you want to. I mean, it's all good. Yeah. So I started with my own company. So many Agilists started with reading a book and taking a course, which works. It works. I came in a much harder road. I started a company in an incredibly competitive sector. I started an automotive manufacturing company designing our own cars. and manufacturing them ourselves and testing them ourselves. And that's a really difficult thing to do. Uh, and many agile practices I rediscovered out of necessity, and then later learning some agile practices more formally was able to be more specific. But what I noticed is when we did what I called a build party, and we did one every Thursday in the beginning, making a car a week, and then eventually multiple times a day with new design. That's what was very agile, right? So agile means you design, analyze, build, test, deploy, right? So doing that once a week, a new car design, and then eventually faster than that, made us famous. We set 4 world records, and I'm really proud of that. And that experience changed my life. What I noticed when people joined the build party, no matter who they were, no matter what waterfall culture they had came from, like a lot of Boeing executives came, which is a very waterfall culture mostly. They were immediately productive and engaged. The environment completely created a behavior set that made sense. And the only reason that was safe is because we had all these automated safety tests. We had basically DevOps in hardware with a tremendous regression suite, safety suite. And we had something that's still not as common as it should be. For those of you who were writing software before the IDEs were really good, like command line development, which some people are still doing, you didn't have color coding, you didn't have autocomplete. Well, that's how hardware still is for the most case. It doesn't have to be true. So what these really quick companies and what my company started to do is when you're drawing CAD, there'd be autocomplete and you would have color coding to show that's probably not strong enough. Design time feedback, like software developers do in a mob, right? And in a mob where you have the driver and the navigator and the other roles, you get that feedback from humans too. But some of that feedback can be automated in context shown to you at design time. Well, that's basically DevOps at design time. Those types of assists made it safe. So people, even with a very robust and practiced waterfall mindset and culture, inside this environment, we're super agile, super nimble. I mean, some of the longest lead legacy mindsets I ever could have worked with joined my car company, at least for a while in a build party, and performed at an extremely high level using XP in hardware, and software too. So Saurabh, if I understood you, I agree with what I just heard you say 100%, that the environment can allow only a subset of the culture to make sense. It doesn't even mean it changed their culture. It means only a subset of their habits apply. So those are the ones that are used. And as a result, it's hyper agile.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you also with, I mean, the example that you just shared for others that don't know, it was Wikispeed, right, Joe?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, and there's a ton of stuff out there, including videos on YouTube where you can see Joe doing some of those build parties. And I think you did some of those also at Agile Testing Days, if I remember correctly. Yeah, cool. So let me see, are there other questions that I didn't see? Maybe Susie, you have something. There is one. How is success measured per team?
This, I think, is the problem. Like, it's just expected that you're completely best in the world results that are continuously improving is expected. And as a result, like I said, I think that's the larger challenge, as Zuzi phrased to me, thank you so much, is recognition is difficult or non-existent. And so what the measures are, they're all measures of the product, and it's almost completely independent of you. So is the Model Y lighter and safer? Is the Model X faster and more beautiful? And beautiful is subjective, but they do their best to try to measure that continuously. And that's what's measured. And it's on huge monitors everywhere and with trends. So you get to see, are we trending better? Or are we trending not better? And that allows you and your team to own trying to impact those things. And this, by the way, is what freaks out investors and why Tesla stock keeps diving. it climbs too, but it also keeps diving, is because investors don't understand. They're saying, what's your profit model? What's your cost target per car and your sales target? And the Tesla management team, Musk, Winkerhorn, all of them, they're like, we don't have targets. And they don't. All they have is metrics. Like that sounds wrong. All there are is trends.
Yeah.
Like, how beautiful is the Model X? There's no target. It's just, what are our combined measurements to try to assess how beautiful it is? Is it getting more beautiful? And there's no target. By the end of 2022, it will be 20% more beautiful. There's none of that, because there's basically no management. It's just, here's what's important. What can you do to make it more important? And the teams are measured directly on their contribution towards that, like efficiency and CapEx. But there's no targets. And as a result, there's really no individual measurement or management, or even team measurement or management. It's just product. It's just output measurement.
And I really love that. That's digest thing what we teach at all of our Agile classes, right? That's so cool. I think we have a time for one of the last topic, and that's how long you stayed at Tesla and what makes you leave.
My son's 4th-year-old birthday, I was really tired working the shifts I was working. And I said, may I have time off for, and anyone can take time off, but you want your team to know that you're not going to be there. May I not be here for my son's 4th birthday? And it was when the heat pump was being introduced to the Model 3 from the Model Y, which was, I mean, there's always something critical going on, always, but that was the critical thing then. And the Model Y rear was turning into a single piece casting at that time. And they're like, we're really busy. We'd really like you here, Joe. And I go, he's turning 4. He only does that once. And they're like, we'd really like you here. And I said, then I guess I have to resign. And the management team, there's not really a management team. It's hard to say. I'll call it a management team so we can understand. They said, please don't go. And I said, I guess I have to resign. If it makes sense, I'll come back. And they're like, please don't go. And so I resigned then and went to my son's 4th birthday. And then honestly, I slept for like a week. I was also super tired. It was also an exhaustion decision. So that's how that happened. That was summer 2020. I was glad I got to be there during when Tesla's stock went up 5 times. And it's not like I caused the stock to go up 5 times, but I knew what the company was like inside when that happened. And so I'll know that my whole career. Like, what's it like to be inside a company to have that dramatic level of publicly acknowledged success? And so I know I was there running the Agile operations when it happened. Yep, but that's what made me leave.
What is the one learning you take from that you would like to share with us?
Man, somebody please tweet back at me how to say this in a friendly way, because I really want to. But the no holds barred, gloves off learning. Please help me figure out how to say this kindly, lovingly, because that's the goal. But the real learning, the only way I know how to say it now is there's no excuse. It's fully possible. Do you want to change the world or not? And you can. It's fully accessible. It's fully available. We already know how to do it. It's what the Agilists have been saying for a while. They are right. Do you actually want to do it? There's no excuse. Even saying we can't do it in Europe. Tesla's doing it in Europe right now. There's no excuse. Do you want to have, just to lay it out, Neuralink is a smartwatch-sized device that sits on or in your head. And what is that going to do? So first, do we think that's possible, and do we think it's going to work? That's a question. I think it's possible, and I think it's going to work. In fact, it already has been tested to work to about 124 characters per second of bandwidth up and down. And the idea is to get it faster, faster, faster. So I think it already looks like it worked. Do we think it's going to grow? Yes. Who else is doing that? Is Siemens doing that? Is Philips doing that? Is Pfizer doing that? Are they as far along as Neuralink? No, they're not. Who else is doing it? No one is as far along as Neuralink. Okay. Will it work? Will it improve? I am of the stance it will. If it does, what will happen? You won't need a smartwatch if you have one basically on you or in you. Will you need a cell phone? No. Wait a minute, what's the total market cap of Apple, of Huawei? Are they making a device like this? No. Will they be able to catch up? No. So that means Tesla is likely to capture the entire market cap of Huawei and Apple and Samsung. Well, what about a laptop? Would you need a laptop? No. Well, what about internet access and connectivity? Will you need 4G, 5G? What's Starlink? Starlink is faster, lower latency internet on every square meter of the planet, every single square meter of the planet, and Mars and the moon. If that works, first of all, can it work? Yes, it already works in sample markets. Okay, so it can. Will it grow? It looks like it. Another 60 Starlink satellites launched yesterday. Will it continue to grow? It looks like it. If it works, what does that mean to legacy telecom? Could disrupt it.
That's a good question.
Okay, well, what about transit? What about Deutsche Bahn? What about Japan Rail? What about Amtrak? What if there were a 1,000-kilometer-an-hour train, and it's not even a train, it's actually your Tesla, which is super comfortable and works in COVID times because it's your own vehicle that can transport through these tunnels at 1,000 kilometers an hour. Okay, first, is it possible? Yes, it's already operational for test use in Las Vegas. Is it going to expand? Well, there's bids to do it in 3 other US cities now. So maybe it might. Will it expand? I don't know. I think it will. If it does, what will that do to Deutsche Bahn, Japan Rail, Amtrak? What's the market cap of all of those companies added together? So the real takeaway is not only can we do this, but your company's going to die if you don't within 10 years. And so, I mean, that's before a lot of us were planning to retire. And Musk keeps saying he doesn't want a monopoly. He's saying you can lease autopilot, you can lease our technologies. So I'd say my advice is get ahead of the curve, try to lease one of those technologies now while your company still looks strong. Attempt an agile transformation, a full-on real one, not a pretend we have daily scrums, but a one-year plan one. See if you can actually empower some people, like with budgets and not an annual review. Like, see if you can truly let go of annual reviews and not ask people about their educational history at all in an interview. Just ignore that. See if you can do that. See if you can actually do that. Because if you don't, you will not have a job unless governments step in and do basically mass unemployment insurance. And that is it. Please, somebody tweet at me and figure out how to teach me to say that in a really loving, embracing way, because I actually think everyone could do this. And I actually think it could be super fun. I never had as much fun at work as I did at Tesla. And yes, the hours were long. So maybe we could do something about the shifts. Maybe we could run 4 6-hour shifts instead and have a lot of family time. And maybe we could have places for the family and pets to be at work, like Agile Testing Days and ALE do, right? So maybe we can really level up the awesome. Well, let's do that. And I would say we really need to embrace this, or we're going to be like paper newspapers or the horse and buggy industry. The agile wave is pretty big right now. And I'd say let's surf that wave instead of holding on to our waterfall office that looks like it's under the agile tsunami.
I think that's a pretty good final statement. Joe, thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have you back at least minimum within the next 12 months.
Thank you very much. That was a great story.
I wrote a
And-
book, please read it. It's called Scrum Master, the Agile Training Seminar of Business Performance. I think what's different about that and other Agile books is it's actually how to connect most of what we know about Agile to the business performance of companies like the Musk companies. So please read my book, Scrum Master. I
will
have
link
2
it.
children's books that are Agile. Everyone is Santa and Good Night Nut, Good Night Bolt. Please read them to your kids. And Sorab and Janet's and many other people's platform, Scrum Academy, I'm on it now. Please check out my Europe time zone courses on Agile Hardware and Scrum Master for business performance, Product Owner for business performance, on Agile Academy, which is built on a new platform, Agile TMS, that I'm really impressed by Sorab and Janet and Zuzi contribution. Super thank you, everyone. Have the bestest day ever.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
Joe,
you.
so much. All right. So
And thank you
everyone,
all.